stand.
Little person.
Hey, it's Greg from Fizzics, and I'm here at Lower Forge Brewing Company with the owners / brewers here. We have Sean and Paula Gailey, and you guys opened up this place, what was it, just last year?
Yeah, last spring during American Craft Beer Week was our grand opening.
Awesome. And how's business been so far?
Really good. A lot of good support. Local markets, a lot of good support. Even further out, throughout the state, New Jersey beer has really taken off in the past couple of years, thanks to some great local brewers, little shops like ours, and then the bigger shops. You know, I'm like New Jersey beer geek myself, so immediately I'll go in a restaurant and I'll be like, so what do you have on tap locally? Like, restaurant around the corner has got Cane on right now, so that's what I'm ordering, you know. And together we've all really changed consumers' minds that nobody thought about Jersey beer a few years ago, and we've absolutely been the beneficiary of that. We've had a lot of really good success over the past year.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit about Lower Forge. How'd you guys come up with the name? What's the whole kind of story you're painting behind the brand here?
So one of the things you see in everything we have here in the tasting room is that we embrace a lot of local history. And Lower Forge is actually part of the forgotten history that takes place in the state forest south of here. There used to be a huge iron industry, and you would have these different furnaces basically spread throughout the woods where they would process and package up iron originally harvested in the bogs. It was kind of dirty, but it was used in like Revolutionary War shot. It was used in early industry before industry moved further out west. And Lower Forge was one of those places. You go back there now, nature's reclaimed it. There's an old pile of slag, an abandoned bridge. It's a great place to hike to, but it's empty, it's abandoned. And it was one of those spots that me and my wife, we used to love to go back and explore the area. Even after my son was born and he became interested in the history, we'd go out and we'd go geocaching, big scavenger hunt through the area. So it seemed like a natural way to bring this forgotten story that's right here in our backyard back into the public. It was kind of cool.
Very cool. I love it when there's a cool story tying it all together. And for those of you watching, cheers, Tom. We need to get a beer. Let's get that going. For those of you watching though, now we got a really cool ambiance in this tap room, and stick around to the end of the video. We'll walk around and do a little virtual tour, show you the brew house over here as well. But we're getting a little thirsty here. We're gonna start off with the first beer, Squeeze the Day. Phil says cheers. Cheers, Phil. You can see kind of a tap list behind us here. Let me zoom in on that. Give you a chance to read. So there's a couple different Radlers on right now, which you don't see everywhere. Oh, this is actually the can art for it. So check that out. They are starting to can a few of their different offerings. We've actually got a few sitting right down here. So look out. There's probably some new beers that are going to be getting canned soon. But we're going to dig in to this one, which is the Squeeze the Day, which is the grapefruit Radler. So I'll let the brewers take over and tell us a little bit about this beer, what we might be expecting.
All right. So what's pretty cool about a Radler is it's the original style that even predates shandies, what most people are used to. Most people are used to, you know, the big beer lemon shandy that we've all seen the commercials for. But the problem is it's watery. To me, it's not full-bodied. Where a Radler, in my opinion, when you're more true to the original style, it's still beer. It's not just beer-flavored water, and you almost have to put a little more effort into it. So this is a Pils-based malt, very happy German yeast strain, and just a light hop body, which then gets along great with the grapefruit, because let's face it, any type of Cascade, Centennial, Backbone is always going to get along with citrus. So
oh yeah, I'm
just
smelling that already.
Summer beer. Woo.
Beautiful color to it.
And it was a hot summer.
So this is going to be your first time you guys have had beer on Fizzics.
Yeah,
so you can see right off the bat we got some nice, really fine bubbles. So cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for the
I
hospitality.
broke the rules. I had to try first. That's really good.
Great aroma.
That puts a solid head on there. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, this is one you can really go for on a day like today.
This has been a very solid seller for us all summer. It's a perfect backyard beer.
Oh, that is fresh grapefruit. It's not like some sort of like artificial flavor. It feels like freshly squeezed cup.
So, good funny story, which I probably shouldn't say on live video. We always ferment with fresh ingredients because I actually find a lot of artificial flavorings actually upset my stomach, and it's one of those things, if I can't drink it, why am I going to give it to anybody else? Well, the first time out, we brewed this in the spring. We brewed it for a local brew fest down in Medford Lakes, the Medford Lakes Brew Fest. But I didn't think about how much fruit I was putting in there post-primary fermentation. And the problem is you start getting a little bit of wild fruit fermentation afterwards. Fantastic beer. The batch was fantastic. By the end of the batch, those kegs were almost like little jet engines because the amount I introduced all these new fermentable sugars in there. I just hadn't thought about it and planned it out in advance because we were home brewing, 5-10 gallons at a time. You can get away with a little bit of that. After all, I'm leaving fermentable sugars in those bottles to carbonate them. But we had to scale that a little bit as we developed it over the summer and all, and make sure that as we're actually using pulped grapefruit and real grapefruit in this, we're not going to end up creating a beer that's not going to have a shelf life. So thankfully we worked through it, really happy with how it's developed. But it is pretty funny how it started off as one of the crazier beers we ever brewed.
Yeah, this is tasty. I could definitely put a few of these away. And so you guys, we'll talk a little bit about the scale of the brewery. It's a 3 barrel system, right?
Yes.
So we'll walk you guys through the tanks in there after this. So these beers are getting brewed in small batches. You're coming and you're drinking them fresh here, local. It's fresh because you're constantly brewing and brewing in small batches.
And even beautiful. The bars that carry us, we don't force them to do big orders. I don't mind running beer over to them so that they don't have anything stale sitting in the back of their walk-in. When you go down and you see us on tap, chances are that keg's been dropped off pretty recently because I'd rather run them over another one than have them have to order a whole bunch and have it have a shelf life.
Steve says, got his topper weight tap 2 days ago. Awesome product. Cheers, man. We're about to get into this next one, Against the Grain. This is your unofficial flagship. This is a mildly hoppy American Amber Ale, 5.5% ABV. What's behind the name in this one? Has it got any story to it? The Against the Grain.
I was about to say I'll introduce this one because then I'll have my mom and partner in crime here talk about the brew house, since I usually saddle her with the tours anyway because I'm that type of son. But Against the Grain, it was the idea that there are very popular ambers out there, but some people complain about the hoppy, post-bite, if you don't like hoppy beers. Some people complain they aren't hoppy enough. So this is actually a beer that we tried to specifically brew that it would satisfy people who really want a hoppy, decent beer, but also be very approachable to non-craft beer drinkers, especially here locally. We have a lot of people that the most crafty thing they've ever drank was Blue Moon. So now we're introducing them to all these crazy beers. I want to be able to make sure that there's always something on our menu or something at the bars that carry us on their menu.
That's great logic.
It's basically easy to drink. So the secret to this is we used a little bit of flaked barley and flaked oats, which you'd normally find in a stout.
Right, to give it that color.
Just a little tiny bit in the mash, not for the color, but it gives it a very smooth mouthfeel, and it actually settles out that hop after bite. So suddenly a beer that you would think is very hoppy is actually pretty smooth and easily approachable. So you've satisfied kind of the core of both crowds. So far it's done pretty well for us. This is our #1 seller out to wholesale, out to other bars. And I wouldn't be surprised if within a month or so it's going to be our #1 selling cans too.
Cheers to that.
Cheers.
Let's get into it.
I'll sneak one.
Can I do that again?
That isn't... I have to admit, for you guys, I'm actually a little impressed with
Look
this.
at that lacing there. So this is not agitating any of the carbonation from the body of the beer. It's just using sonic waves. So the beer, when you push backwards, passes through an oscillator that creates sound waves that breaks the CO2 out into a really uniformly sized bubble. So it helps with retention, gives off more of the aroma, and then the mouthfeel is usually the first thing people pick out as being smooth and creamy. And this is a really nicely balanced beer.
Now, my wife's probably watching this at home. She's not going to be happy that you just put something else, another beer gadget on the Christmas list.
Beautiful. Yeah, this is a well done brew, I must say.
Really been happy with the reception of this beer in the market. It's, you said unofficial flagship. Someday we're probably going to have to make it official, just over and over. This beer it is as solid a seller for us as it gets. We just finished this batch. Actually, this was just kegged yesterday, so this is about as fresh as it gets.
You got to come to the source to get the beer on tap, right? It's the best.
And I can tell you, I'm probably going to run about a dozen kegs of this out to different bars next week. This is going to be a good week for us next week, having this back around.
And who knows, you might end up canning it with like some of these other ones. Let's show some cool art here. This is one of them. We showed you the Rather already. We got the Watermelon Wanderlust, which is a pale ale. And then Mosaic IPA. This is Magical Mosaic. Delicious hop, one of my favorites.
That's got a bit of Summit in there too to really amp it up a little bit.
Speaking of amping up, in true Big Beer Friday fashion, we're going to
say
end
it was Big Beer Friday
with a big one called Perseverance, and we're going to persevere through this. It is a 13.4 ABV, and it is bourbon barrel aged. So I'll let you take it from there.
Actually, I might have to let my co-brewer, since I keep cutting her off. I gotta let her introduce at least one of our beers, because we really do work together pretty hard on this.
So when we were doing our anniversary beer, we wanted it to be both special and tell a little bit about our story. So that's why we did the bourbon barrel aged imperial stout and call it Perseverance, because we feel like that's what we've been doing since 2014 to get open. But we wanted, one of the things that we want to do is we make beers for our customers to enjoy. So we like to have a wide variety and a lot of different tastes. And they seem to enjoy it as well. They enjoy the stories, the names, and everything about it. They do tease us a lot because it's a mother-son brew team.
Oh, that's I think you got lucky in that sense. It's a nice family team. Look at that. How many duos can you say out there? It's a mother-son running a brewery. That's pretty awesome.
I guess it should be son-mother since he's the boss this time.
Well, actually, it works out pretty cool. My mom got into home brewing actually when I first started having the crazy idea of opening a brewery here in town, and she came from a long background of cooking, owning a restaurant, and has a completely different style than me, which actually has helped us tremendously. We didn't know it at the time, because when people come in, and I'm not picking on any breweries at all, but sometimes you go to a brewery and there are 8 taps, 6 of the same style. So having 2 different brewers with 2 unique styles, it's really helped us basically be a variety pack as people come in, and usually people can find a bunch that they like rather than worry about getting stuck in a style rut. Now this I'm curious about.
Look at that. Cheers.
It's beautiful.
I was
Cheers.
gonna say,
That nice
I can smell
tan head.
smell the aroma on that too. So
Oh, yeah.
all right.
That's all things you look for in a big stout like that.
Ooh, if I drink this whole thing, I'm gonna call out sick tonight.
Sorry, too late. You're already here.
That is silky smooth. And it's not super heavy, surprisingly.
The big trick with this is, and we get back into how we develop our recipes, usually in a stout like this, in the grist, you're only going to have maybe about 30 to 35% flaked grains. It's actually a little bit of a similar story to what gives Against the Grain such a smooth finish. Although it redefined stuck mash when we brewed it, we actually were at about 41%, and just having that little bit extra on top of everything else. And this was actually our biggest malt bill ever. So
Did you have to double mash or did it all fit?
no, it all fit barely.
Tested
We had
the
some
limits.
issues. It was about 350 pounds, which for us, that was our biggest grain bill to date. And I think that might be the limit of what we can do. So between that and then the amount of flaked grains that decided to test our limits as we were making sure everything kept flowing, the good thing about that is it helped keep things smooth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we actually had we're lucky with our connections that we have some really cool people come through here, and one of the people who comes in here regularly, they actually can explain to you the biology of why flaked grains and some of these other things, they actually play with your palate. The astringency and the booziness of the alcohol is there, but when it actually hits your palate, it's the same as when you have candy. All of a sudden all you taste is a sweetness because you're actually tricking your tongue. It's a trick, it's like a joke on your tongue. So you ignore that little boozy afterbite right until the end, when in reality, it's there. It's just being covered up
Very
by
well
this.
covered in this.
Yeah.
For 13.4, I mean, even an 11% beer, I'm expecting to get some of that booziness. I mean, it's there, but it's layered down, and it's kind of, you want it there as an bourbon barrel aged stout like that. So you want to have a nice little touch of it. But it's very nice. It's smooth. It's not super viscous, like it's gonna weigh you down. It's not cloyingly sweet at all. It's really good.
We also got lucky. We have a good friend at North Jersey Homebrew that got those barrels fresh from Heaven Hill Distillery down in
nice.
Kentucky. So I mean, we got lucky. We got very good barrels, fresh dumped right to our door, and it's like, let's put some good beer in them. So that always helps because now you've given this beer this perfect container. That, let's face it, it spent months in there.
And then there's the yeast.
Oh,
The
yes.
yeast wrangler.
The yeast wrangler.
The yeast
The yeast wrangler.
So when we were brewing this and we put it in fermentation, the yeast was supposed to top out and die at 12%.
How'd you get it back up?
I talked to it.
The sixth sense.
He laughs at me when I talk about what I do for the yeast gods and how I talk to my yeast. But considering it's saving him over $120 in supply,
Yeah, I was about to say our savings per batch
generations out of it.
It can't be knocked. And I do have to admit, we had a stuck fermentation, and I'm not going to say which batch because thankfully it was not something we ever had to dump. But we're sitting there and we're on day 2 and we're sweating. We're looking at everything with all the data charted out, and nothing is moving. Do we repitch? What do we do? If we repitch, there's going to be a lot of variables. This beer might be going down the drain. No lie, she's sitting there and she's like, come on. You know, she just talks to it. She pats the fermenter.
I talk to my children.
And all of a sudden, there's a little bit of activity in the blow-off. So we sat and we measured it over the next couple hours. I'm not saying I'm a believer or a skeptic one way or the other. Activity restarted that day. And thankfully, after a very dramatic 2 days, the beer was fine and it ended up finishing perfectly fine. So if you want to talk to the yeast and talk to the fermentation cellar, I cannot argue with that at all.
He lets me have my way, and every now and then I just remind him that it's women that have been brewing for 10,000
Yes, that's
years.
very true.
Yes.
It's the newcomers are the men, so every now and then he just lets me just go on my own way and do my thing, and he's happily smiling.
I was about to say, knock on wood, the successes have far outnumbered the failures. And even our biggest failure actually turned into one of our most popular beers. We basically had a Hefeweizen was not performing up to par. And I'm like, you know what? This beer might be done for anyway. And we went to a local farm, Whalen Farm down in Chemung, and it's got fresh blueberries. So we loaded up. We loaded up these flats of blueberries, brought it back here, and we started experimenting. And we ended up, the entire batch, we put in 60 pounds of blueberries.
The first time, 60 pounds.
Ended up being one of our most popular summer beers last summer. So then, now the problem is we have to replicate the mistake that made us play with this beer. And we did have to replicate the mistake to get the same finish and quality out of it, to reproduce it and keep bringing the beer out. But it was one of those things that we experimented and it worked, and it worked out well. Well, even there, some of our notes, one of our IPAs we brew, we had a power outage in the middle of the whirlpool. So we actually did, we just killed the pump in the middle of the whirlpool, put a 5-minute timer on it, and then bring it back up. I don't know if we're making a dramatic difference, but we're replicating every part of what we're doing over and over to be consistent. So the glass you drink now is the same as the glass you drink down the road, and ideally
Well, what do you say we do a little walkthrough here? I'll let you navigate. I'll grab the camera. All right.
Okay.
So we'll start with this cool tap room. You're saying it's got like a beer garden type of vibe, an indoor. So you see up at the ceiling, there's these cool beer garden light fixtures, a lot of wood and earth tones.
And a lot of this is salvage too. So those red doors right there, that was a barn that blew down over in Sandy. And even the doors on the front of our
I didn't even notice those are doors.
They all came from local barns. Actually, the pallet wood down the end, that's the pallet our tanks arrived on. That door right there is a grain door from a barn that got rebuilt in Tabernacle. And this used to be a print shop, and we hide where the old walls were with those big beams on the wall. And the drop ceiling was where that lathe is on the wall. And all the material we cut out of the walls became these tables. Warrior Woodworks, one of our good friends, built these tables out of all the material we've recovered from the walls. So it's kind of a cool way to keep the old spirit of the building still in the building.
And we've got like some brick table. We got a cool hangout area over here. Some leather chairs. They have a little front patio here right on the main street. Downtown Medford. right. Let's take it to the brew house and cellar.
I was going to say, hopefully I didn't leave it too messy back here.
I'll let you lead the way. All right. This is where the magic happens.
Exactly. So over here we have an electrically driven 3-barrel system. We actually work on recirculating our mash to keep it warm. You'll notice there's no direct flames. So we have really cool temperature controls built into brewing every batch. Any home brewers out there, I'll tell you, if you play with your mash temperatures, there's a lot of things you can do. You know, mouthfeel versus fermentable sugars, what temperature you're mashing at. Although it's not as used as often anymore if you're doing different types of step mashing, which you don't need with a lot of improved grains, but you can still play with certain things. You know, we can control all that with how we control the mash circulation and the temperatures. Basically, okay, we want the mash at this step to be 144, now we're going to bring it at 152. We can really dial all that in perfectly, which is one reason why I went with electric instead of direct flame. Plus, ideally, as we grow, it scales to steam very nicely. Being in the middle of downtown, everybody inevitably asks what this is. We actually, that condenser works perfectly. I can brew while we're open and not even overwhelmed. There are a lot of people that you'd be surprised are very sensitive to the smell of brewing, that they'll be, oh, what's that smell? Oh, it's so crazy. That actually helps control everything. If nothing else, it keeps our neighbors happy. But it's kind of cool because it keeps the environment in here pretty controllable too, that we don't have a lot of steam and other things going on that basically if I want it to be 72 degrees in here, it would be 72 degrees in here. I'm not overwhelming the HVAC as I'm brewing open, so it works pretty nice.
Yeah, it feels nice back here. You don't want it to be super hot, especially on those hot brew days.
Exactly.
So I think that was a good piece to add on there.
Probably should have moved all the hoses. We were cleaning tanks this morning, but
cleanliness is important.
I'm sure you see this with all the breweries you visit. It's 90% of it's cleaning. 90%
Oh yeah.
of it's all cleaning.
Got to make the. It's about making the yeast happy.
Exactly.
And that involves a lot of sterilization.
Yes.
Right.
That's one of the biggest investments we did early is a decent cleaning system. We actually got lucky. We were at a New Jersey Brewers Association. They do meetings, safety meetings and all that. And they put something together for their members last year. It was at Flying Fish. Well, while we're there, the guys at Flying Fish introduced us to the guys that do their cleaning. Now, they have like 500-gallon tanks of cleaning materials. We have like 15-gallon tanks. But compared to what I used home brewing, this stuff is amazing. And when you run it and you circulate it and run these cycles, we have ATP testing. And actually, when we swab the walls of the tanks, it tries to identify cellular decay. And we're getting so far below tolerances that it's about as good as we can get without making back here into a clean room. It really is. And that's something, you talk about how cool Jersey's brewing scene is. We would have never found these guys without the introduction from Flying Fish and the Jersey Brewers Association, kind of like, hey, little guys, you should talk to this guy. They're going to help you make better beer. Definitely helped us out a lot.
A rising tide floats all ships. I think
Exactly.
that's a good way to summarize the New Jersey craft beer scene as it continues to boom. I think we're at 82 breweries and a bunch and counting. So
Wow.
82, yeah. So
I thought we were at 74, 75.
that was probably a few months ago.
One of these days I got to
Yeah.
catch up. There's probably about 30 or so I got to go hit.
So we're going to wrap this up. What can you tell people out there to look out for on the horizon for Lower Ford? You going to be at any festivals? You got any new beers coming up?
So Medford's got an Oktoberfest, September 16th. Pretty cool festival. Actually, I was just told today, I think Devil's Creek is going to be there too. And Devil's Creek is a local couple actually from town here, so they're really cool. Beyond that, you're pouring at Perkins. There's a really cool fundraiser September 14th at the Perkins Arts Center that we'll have some beer over there. We won't have a large presence at Jersey Crafts and Drafts, but without giving anything away, a beer you may have tried today that is not being marketed anywhere else, we're probably going to be putting a case or two together for the VIP tent, so it's worth getting those VIP tickets.
All right, you heard it. So thank you guys so much for welcoming us to the brewery, giving everybody an inside peek. Hopefully all you people out there in New Jersey and surrounding states who haven't been here, if you're passing through, come give it a stop, have some great beers, hang out with some cool people, and we will see you next week. Tune in.